Her parents sold her because she could not give children. A daughter traded like livestock, until a lonely lumberjack with 4 children stepped out of the shadows and claimed her. She was beautiful, yes, but barren, a tree that would never bear fruit. What good was she? Please, please don't. Mabel's voice cracked as her father shoved her forward into the dusty square. She stumbled into the circle of eyes and whispers. Men smirked, women muttered, children stared, wide-eyed, clutching their mother's skirts. The spring breeze carried the stench of manure and smoke, but none of it cut as deep as the shame burning in Mabel's chest. Her father, once a respected cattle broker, now reduced to a bitter man drowning in debt, barked to the crowd, "Half. The price of a steer, folks. She cooks, she sews, she stays quiet. Anyone with coin, she's yours tonight." Laughter rippled through the square. Mabel's cheeks flamed, not only from the sun, but from the memory that still clawed at her. Her wedding dress torn from her body, her husband's house spitting her out like dirt. 2 years of prayers, bitter herbs, whispered pleas to God, all worthless. Her husband replaced her with a younger, louder girl who kissed her mother-in-law's hand and promised 5 sons. Mabel had been thrown out the same day the new wife walked in. Now, dust on her hem and bruises on her pride, she stood on auction. "Anyone?" her father barked again. "She's 22, still got all her teeth, just faulty inside." Silence that followed was long and heavy. Then, bootsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. The crowd shifted aside. A man stepped forward. Broad shoulders, shirt stained with sap and sawdust, a hat hiding most of his face. His jaw was sharp, his hands thick with calluses, his eyes, when they lifted, not cruel, only tired. He said nothing, just reached into his coat, pulled a leather pouch, and spilled coins onto the table. The sound of them silenced the jeers. No bartering, no hesitation. Mabel's father raised an eyebrow. "You sure she don't come with a refund?" The stranger's eyes flicked to Mabel for one long, unreadable moment. Then back to her father. She won't be judged anymore. That was all. Then he turned and walked away, not even checking if Mabel followed. Mabel froze. Was this rescue or another prison? Her father shoved her forward. "Go on then. You're his now." She clutched her tiny satchel, an old pair of shoes, a locket with her mother's face, and followed into the dust. Outside the blacksmith's, the man waited with a mule-drawn cart. He didn't help her up, just watched. When she finally climbed in, he handed her a canteen. Long ride. The water tasted of tin, and silence. The prairie stretched endless. Fields of brittle grass, leaning fences, a sky so wide it mocked her smallness. She glanced sideways at him. Weathered, but not. Old, maybe 30, maybe younger. No wedding ring, only scars on his knuckles. Her whisper cracked the silence. Why take me?" He didn't look at her. 4 kids, no mother. No time to find one the polite way. Her heart lurched. "So, I'm a governess?" "No." His voice was flat. "Just someone not cruel. That's enough." The cart rocked across a creek bed. Mabel's pulse thundered. By nightfall, they reached a sagging cabin tucked into pines and cottonwoods. The porch groaned. A wagon wheel leaned broken against the barn. Chickens scattered at their arrival. 4 children peeked through a curtain. 3 boys. 1 girl, cheeks flushed, eyes wary. "This is Ms. Mabel," the man said. "She'll be staying." The youngest, barely 3, toddled to his father and wrapped tiny arms around his leg. The man lifted him effortlessly and opened the cabin door. Room upstairs, warm waters in the bucket. Mabel climbed shaky legs up the stairs. The bed was small but clean. A window overlooked the field. She sat, silent tears streaking her face. She had not chosen this, but for the first time in weeks, no one demanded she give sons. Silas's cabin, if that was his name, stood crooked. In the pines, patched roof, blanket for a door, air thick with pine resin and children's socks. The children weren't angels. They were wild, sharp-eyed pups. Josiah, the oldest, tested her with suspicion. Eli was loud, always hungry. Hannah clung to her father's leg. Little Benji couldn't even say her name, but he followed her shadow everywhere. Mabel started small. Burned beans, ruined bread, stitched socks with shaking hands. She spoke little, her voice too fragile. One afternoon she dropped an entire pot of stew. The crash froze the room. Her heart seized, waiting for a slap, a scream. But Silas only picked up the pot and said, "It's only stew." That night she wept quietly on the porch. Later she tucked the children in, humming a trembling lullaby to calm Hannah. Then the storm. Wind howled, trees bent. Hannah burned with fever. Silas, strong as an ox, stood helpless. Mabel didn't hesitate. Willow bark, mint leaves, cool cloths, whispers through the night. Her hands never stilled. When dawn cracked, the fever broke. Hannah's small voice asked for pancakes. Silas stood in the doorway, jaw slack, shoulders lowered, staring like he had witnessed a miracle. Too tired to smile, Mabel only nodded. That morning, she came down to find a kettle steaming and a mug. Waiting, a note in stiff handwriting. "Thank you. No signature." Her throat tightened. The tea was bitter, but it warmed her chest. Something was shifting. She had been tossed out like broken furniture, sold like cattle. But here, in this crooked cabin with no door, someone finally saw her. Not for her failure, but for her hands, her care, her heart. That afternoon, little Benji waddled up, lifted his arms, and said one word, clear as sunrise. "Maple." And for the first time in weeks, Mabel smiled, not because she had to, because she wanted to. Spring crept slow. Her tears stopped at night. Her voice grew stronger. She taught the children letters, sang with them, stitched scarves from feed sacks. They called her Miss May. She never corrected them. But even as the world thawed, fear lived under her ribs, a bruise that never quite faded. One afternoon, Silas asked if she could ride with him into town to pick up salt and tin nails. He said nothing more, just tossed her the reins like she already belonged at his side. At the general store, Mabel stepped out while Silas waded in. Line for supplies. The air was buzzing with gossip as always. But then, a voice cut through it like a knife. Sharp, cruel. Well, if it ain't the barren ghost herself. Mabel turned slowly. Her mother-in-law, standing bold in front of the dry goods stand, fanning herself with a folded newspaper. Beside her stood the new wife, smug, younger, with lace gloves and a hand stroking her belly in a practiced pose. "That's her?" the girl asked loudly, making sure half the market heard. "Yes," the older woman sneered. "Pretty but cursed. Couldn't give us even a squalling pup." "I will," the girl declared, chin raised. "A big, healthy boy, and he will carry the family name." Not like her, useless as a cracked jar. Mabel's fists tightened at her sides. She did not answer. Her throat was heavy with everything she refused to give them. The tears, the rage, the humiliation. She turned to walk away. Then, a hand touched her shoulder. Silas. He had stepped out from the shade of the store, dirt still clinging to his boots, his eyes dark as storm clouds. He looked at the two women without blinking, then turned to Mabel. His voice was calm, steady, cutting the air like an axe through wood. "She is the only one who can get my daughter to sleep," he said. "The only one who taught Benji not to throw stones. The only one who makes our house feel like it has a roof." Silence fell. Neither woman responded. They just stared. And that was it. Silas led Mabel away. No more words wasted. Mabel sat quiet, the whole wagon ride back. That night, when the children were asleep, she gathered wild asters that bloomed near the well and made a small wreath. She didn't even know why. She just needed to make something soft, something gentle with her own hands again. Weeks passed. Then, the whispers began. The new wife, the proud and fertile one, still had no child. Her belly stayed flat. Her tongue grew sharper. She refused to go to church. Whispers turned into rumors. She had taken up with a male writer at the post station. Desperation led her to a dangerous plan. Pretend a pregnancy by any means. But truth has a smell, and it clings. Her husband found out. The lies burned like wildfire. He kicked her out, tore down the nursery curtains, cursed her name. He aged 10 years in a matter of days. Then one morning, as Mabel bought flour in town, he appeared. Her ex-husband. He looked ruined. Hat crushed in his hands, shame carved into every line of his face. "Mabel," he said, voice soft, broken. "I was wrong. I see it now. You are the only woman who ever truly cared for me. The only one who—" She raised her hand to stop him. "I remember the day you let your mother spit on me. The day you threw me out like a spoiled meal, because my body could not do what yours could not either." He swallowed, eyes darting. "I was a fool." Mabel stepped closer, her voice steady as stone. "I have 4 children who hug me when I wake. I have a man who never asks what I cannot give, only what I want to share. My house is full of warmth, laughter, peace." She paused. "And I would rather sweep ashes for Silas than sit in your parlor like a porcelain trophy." Her ex-husband opened his mouth, but no words came. She turned and walked away. Across the street, Silas stood holding a sack of rice. He had seen everything, heard everything. His face held no pride, only something deeper. Gratitude, respect, love, not pity, but choice. Chosen not once, but every day. The sky above was streaked with ash and orange as dusk settled heavy over the valley. That evening, Mabel stepped out to the well. She had forgotten to fetch water for the morning. The house was quiet. The children asleep. She didn't notice him at first, the man leaning at the fence post. Jed, the trapper from down the ridge. Half drunk, as always. "Well, look who it is," he slurred. "The pretty little mule Silas dragged home from the market. Thought you were barren, but I hear you've been raising kids just fine." Mabel stiffened. "It's late, Jed. You should head home," he chuckled. "Just wanted a look. Silas keeps you locked up tighter than a coin purse." She turned to leave, but he moved too fast. His hand clamped around her wrist, rough, filthy, grip like iron. Come on now, he breathed, reeking of sweat and whiskey. You owe us all a little smile after all that gossip. Before she could scream, before she could wrench free, a shadow tore out of the barn. Silas. No warning. No hesitation. One punch. Clean. Brutal. Straight to Jed's jaw. The man crumpled like wet canvas in the dirt. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. Even the wind stopped. Silas stood over him, chest heaving, blood streaking his knuckles. Mabel stared, her heart thundering, but not from fear. She had never seen Silas raise his voice, let alone his hand. Jed groaned on the ground, but Silas never glanced at him. His eyes locked on her, dark, alive, burning. You all right? His voice low. She nodded, though her hands trembled, her eyes glassy. I'm sorry, she whispered, though she didn't know why. Silas stepped closer. He untied the red kerchief from his neck. Gently, he wrapped it around her wrist. The wrist Jed had seized. No one touches you, he said. Not unless I say. His tone was not angry, but firm, final. Then he looked at his own bleeding knuckles and muttered under his breath, Damn fool. Back inside, Mabel boiled water and cleaned his hand with a scrap of muslin. The room was silent, but heavy, thick with tension, with something unnamed pressing in the air. You did not have to, she whispered. He would have left. Silas looked at her, eyes softening like embers fading after fire. He should not have grabbed you. She dabbed carefully at the blood on his knuckles. Still, you do not even like fighting. I like less, he answered, his voice low, steady. Seeing someone hurt you. Her breath caught. Her lashes blinked fast. I cried, she admitted, voice breaking, but not because I was scared. Because no one's ever stood up for me like that. He didn't reply. Just looked at her as if she was fragile, yes, but not breakable. Something rare, something worth defending. When she finished tending him, she leaned back. He flexed his fingers. Thank you, she said softly. Silas shrugged. I reckon I don't want a world where folks like him think they can talk to you that way. Her smile came small, quiet, but grateful. Her wrist still ached, yet her heart, after years of being crushed, felt, for the first time, held. Outside, the stars burned sharp and cold. Inside, a man who never raised his voice had finally raised his hand. For her. And she, a woman told all her life that she was too little to matter, had been shielded like something precious. It was not love yet, but it was the shape that love might take. Morning broke, lined with frost, sharp against fence posts, breath puffing white in the air. Mabel was kneading dough in the kitchen when a scream ripped through the yard. High, sharp. A child. The bowl fell from her hands, flour exploding like snow. She sprinted barefoot across the dirt. Silas's youngest son, Caleb, was crumpled near the woodpile. His leg twisted at a sickening angle beneath him. The axe lay nearby, its blade streaked red. Oh, God! Mabel gasped, dropping to her knees. Silas was already there, face tight, voice steady. He scooped the boy gently in his arms. Go boil water. Bring bandages from the pantry. She ran, heart hammering, hands clumsy with terror. When she returned, Caleb lay on the kitchen table, pants cut open at the thigh. Blood welled from a deep, jagged gash. Mabel pressed cloth to the wound with trembling hands. Caleb cried out, face pale. "I know, baby," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know. It hurts, just hold on." Her tears fell onto his leg as she worked, fingers smeared red, tying and binding, praying with every knot. Then, through clenched teeth, a tiny voice. "Don't cry, Mama." She froze. The word hung in the air like holy fire. "Mama." Caleb blinked at her, lips trembling. "You make the best biscuits. You sing soft, like my real mama used to." Mabel cupped his cheek, hand shaking, tears falling freely now. Later, when Caleb finally rested with his leg elevated, the other children gathered near the fire. One laid a blanket across her shoulders. Another placed a carved toy horse in her. "Hand! Papa said you're staying," said the freckled girl, serious-eyed. "Does that mean you're our mama now?" Mabel could not speak. She only nodded, and that was enough. From that night on, they called her Mama. No ceremony, no grand words, just truth, just love. Silas saw it all. How she soothed their fears in the dark. How she braided hair, wiped tears, sang lullabies. How their voices softened when they whispered her name. That night, after the house went still, Silas found her on the porch beneath the stars. He stood a long moment before speaking. "I ain't ever been a good talker. You know that." She looked up. "You say enough." He nodded. "When I put money down at that market, I thought I was giving you a way out. But I never thought I had a right to keep you." Mabel's heart thudded. "I figured you'd leave once you had your footing," he said quietly. "And if that's what you want, I won't stop you. I won't hold you to what started as a sale." Her whole body trembled, not with fear, but something older, softer, fiercer. "I used to think love meant being chosen at first sight," she said. "But I've learned something better. Being chosen again. After people see who you really are." Silas's jaw tightened. "If you're not sending me away," she whispered, "then I'm not going." The porch creaked as she stepped closer, slid her hand into his calloused one. "I may not have made these children," she said, "but they made me into someone I thought I'd never be. And you let me be that, without demanding anything in return." Silas looked at her then, not with lust, not with guilt, but with awe, as if she was the one who had rescued him. "I just wanted you safe," he said. "And now," she replied, her voice steady, "I want more than safe." He pulled her into his arms, not like a man taking possession, but like a man who had been given a second chance and meant to hold it gently. Inside, the fire crackled low. Outside, frost crept across the ground. Between them, warmth grew. ATV, promise. Quiet, but unbreakable. The morning sun filtered through pines as Mabel walked hand in hand with Silas's eldest to the schoolhouse. 10 years old, defiant smirk, but nervous now, clutching his reader like a lifeline. At the door, the UD teacher adjusted his 2 large spectacles. "Just catching up on paperwork," he said. "I need to finalize the birth registry, Mom." Mabel smoothed the boy's collar. "What's your full name, son?" "Thomas Jennings." "And your mother's name?" The teacher's pen hovered. Mabel's breath caught. Thomas looked up at her, then back at him. His voice rang clear. "Mabel Silas." Her heart stopped mid-beat. "Is that your mother's married name?" the teacher asked. Thomas nodded, grave. "That's what we call her." The teacher only smiled and wrote it down. "Very well." Mabel Silas, it is. The sting behind her eyes lasted long after they left. She had worn many names: Mabel Barnes, daughter sold by her father; Mabel Jennings, wife discarded for her womb; Mabel, nothing, whispered behind her back. But this name, spoken by a child who owed her nothing, who had no reason to flatter, only truth. Back at the cabin, the smell of pine and smoke greeted her. Silas sat carving something small. A bird, maybe. "The boy do all right?" he asked. "He did more than all right," she whispered. That night, as she folded laundry by the fire, Silas set something beside her. A leather-bound notebook, its pages blank. "I don't got much to give that ain't covered in sap or dirt," he said. "But I figure if anyone's earned a fresh page, it's you." She traced the first page. Clean. Waiting. "I used to dream of starting over." She murmured, "Never thought I'd write my own story." "Write what you want. Or nothing," Silas said. "It's yours." She looked at him. "Will you read it?" "Only if you let me." She gripped the pen like it was a vow, and, with deliberate strokes, she wrote, "Today is the first day I was loved, without having to give birth to anyone." She didn't need to look up. The warmth at her side, Thomas's words, the quiet safety of this cabin, all of it was real. When she finished, Silas set the pen aside and leaned his forehead softly against hers. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" she asked. "For staying long enough for us to love you." Right. And in that quiet, firelit room, the woman once sold for less than a cow was reborn. Not by law, not by marriage, but by something deeper, something true. But the land was not kind. The heat settled like a curse. No rain for 7 weeks. The green edges of Cross Hollow cracked into dust. Creeks thinned to mud. Corn shriveled. Beans withered. Silas worked longer, ate less. His shoulders bent heavier each day. The children counted potatoes like marbles. Their stomachs growled, though no one complained. But Mabel refused silence. At dawn, she filled every bucket from the deepest well. With wrapped hands and a scarf tied tight, she dug into the stone-hard earth, broke it open, turned it over, made room where no life wanted to grow. Others watched, shook their heads. A few offered help. She refused. This was her fight. Morning after morning, she watered. Night after night, she sang as she poured. One evening, Silas stumbled through the door, pale, collapsing. Fever burned him for 2 nights. Mabel never left his side, wiping his brow, spoon-feeding broth, whispering stories of hills and bread, though her own voice shook. And one night, half-conscious, he reached for her hand. "Mabel, don't leave me. Not you, too." Her heart caught. She pressed her lips to his temple. "I am not going anywhere. Not when I'm needed. And here, I am needed." By dawn, the fever broke. His first words came with a crooked smile. "You look like hell," she laughed. "You should see yourself." Outside, the garden was not dead. Not yet. Tiny green shoots pushed through cracked soil. A week later, a petite boy ran in shouting, "May, there's a tomato!" And there it was, red, stubborn, alive. "How?" Silas whispered. "Raw." "You taught me," she said softly. "Not everything worth keeping comes easy." He looked at her blistered hands, then bent and kissed each knuckle, soft as rain. That night, they cut that tomato into slivers, thinner than coins. 6 mouths shared it, and everyone swore it was the best thing they'd ever tasted. Later, when the house was quiet, Silas held her hand. "I don't have much left to give. The land is failing. My strength, too. All I have is this place, these kids, and you." She smiled gently. "That's more than enough, because before you, I had a name no one wanted to say. Now I have a garden that remembers my hands, children who call me home, and a man who asked me to stay, even in drought." He kissed her hands again. "You never needed rain to grow something beautiful." And outside, under a sky still holding back forgiveness, the garden breathed, alive, fighting, just like her. Years passed. The garden spread wild, beans, onions, sunflowers tall enough to hide in. Mabel's garden, crooked rows, stubborn roots, alive. Every morning Silas stood on the porch, watching her tend it. Proof that miracles bloomed quietly. One spring, men came, clean boots, maps, promises. "A railroad," they said, "right through this hill. We'll pay good money." "Think of what you could give your children," they pressed. "A real home, not just stories." Silas looked past them to the swing Mabel hung, the fence he built, the bench where they survived their first winter, everything that was truly his. "No," he said. They pushed again. He raised his hand. "This land is not for sale." That evening, he and Mabel hammered a sign at the road. "Not for sale." Someone had once been allowed to stay here. That was enough. The town whispered. Some mocked. Some nodded, quiet with respect. Years rolled on. Children married. Grandchildren filled the house with laughter, bread, and footsteps. One autumn, a grandson asked, "Grandpa, why don't you ever call it just Mabel's garden?" Silas led him to the gate. Above it, carved carefully in wood, "She did not bear my blood, but she gave birth to the rest of my life." The boy blinked. "You mean she gave you a new start?" Silas smiled. "She gave me everything." When Mabel passed, they buried her at the garden's foot beneath the tree where she once hung wind chimes. On her stone, Silas carved by hand. Here grew everything she was never given, and all that she gave anyway. Every morning, he sat by her grave, until one day he did not. They laid him beside her, beneath the whispering tree, but the garden never stopped growing. Even after the railroad curved around the hill, long after the suits forgot the land, travelers still saw the old fence and read the sign, "Not for sale." Because sometimes a place remembers the ones who refuse to leave. Sometimes dry hills bloom for those who chose love when no one else did. And if this story touched something quiet in your heart, the way Mabel's garden bloomed where no one believed it could, then you are in the right place. At Wild West Love Stories, we bring more than romance. We bring grit, sacrifice, and the kind of love that rises from dust and stays through drought. Stories like Mabel and Silas remind us that even the most forgotten hills can hold the deepest roots. If you want more tales of devotion, defiance, and hard-earned hope, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because out here, love is never easy, but it is always worth it.